Hi, I'm Seamless, and today I want to talk to you about Superior Drummer. Superior Drummer is an acoustic drum library. It's the one that I prefer over all of them, and in this video I'll tell you why. This is basically the introduction to using Superior Drummer for my viewers. This is the first in the series of 4 videos that's actually done in collaboration with TuneTrack themselves. The other 3 videos are going to be about specific techniques of using Superior Drummer in more electronic works. Superior Drummer is more well known for its use in like specific metal and rock stuff, but it can be used to much more specific effect in electronic stuff as well. For example, I have here this little drop here to kind of show you where things are going to go. I'm not actually going to talk about how this was all made, but I'm giving this as an example of things to come. I'm going to play it for you. It's a drum and bass track. It's very loud. I'm going to play it in 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Lots of fun. And here's the loop that I used to make that in the actual Superior Drummer. You might think to yourselves that sounded pretty different, and that's because it did, and there's a reason for that, and we'll talk about that in the video that's actually relevant. But we're going to use this as the sort of the platform on which to describe and discuss what Superior Drummer is. So Superior Drummer is, like I said, an acoustic drum library, but the way that it goes about it is particularly unique. Other drum libraries have since kind of caught on to how this works, but it's still the way that this does it is still, I consider to be the best. The way this works is that you have a kit, and you have various instruments in the kit, and you can pick and choose, the sets that you want. You can also combine different kits. I'm using all the same kit for this particular one, but you can still add more using their X drum capacity. This is called the independent SDX. SDX is the expansion for Superior Drummer. There's a whole bunch of different kinds. The one that I tend to use the most is the Metal Foundry, and a lot of the other videos will use that too. But in this particular example of this track, I actually picked the independent SDX for a very specific reason. We'll get to that too. The thing that makes Superior Drummer the best for pretty much any work is its ability to be treated like a real drum recording. And the way that it does this is that, as opposed to treating all the instruments as kind of like its sampled thing, like if you were using battery by Native Instruments, you kind of have you have your snare, then you have your kick, then you have a hat, and you kind of combine like whole samples that are just that. But a Superior Drummer treats everything as not so much as the instrument, but as microphone positions. When they made these kits, there's actually videos on this. If you go to their website, they have for any of the various expansions, they usually have videos about the making of it. The making of Metal Foundry is particularly interesting. You should go look at that because it gives you an overview about how all this works. They set the kit up, they set all the drums up, and they have all kinds of text pour over to make it like the most perfect tunings and that kind of thing. And then they set the mics up and that kind of thing, and they record the individual hits, but they record the individual hits through all the mics as well. So we'll talk about the mic positions. If you go into the mixer, we actually can see all the various mics, and there you can see that there's a kick in, a kick out, like a mic that's inside the kick, a mic that's outside the kick. And there's a sub mic as well. Then there's farther away mics. That's the kind of depth they have for sampling. For every one hit, for just one hit on the kick, there's actually 4 samples playing at one time. And of course, there's also just unbelievable velocity layering, articulations, round robins for everything, so that it's very real sounding just for that reason. And then 4 mics, or 2 mics for the snare, and a bunch for all the various toms or whatever. And then there's also the rooms and overheads, which are very important because that's kind of just how you get the drum sound. So in this particular loop, we can isolate individual mic groups. So here's the kick, snare bottom. That's the hat mic, even though we're not actually playing. Oh, is that the snare mic? I believe it's that mic. I'm not actually playing hats, but they're there. That's the tom mics. We're not playing any toms either, but we can still hear stuff. Overhead. One of the other overheads. Ambience, monos farther away. And then they're all being bussed together and compressed and whatever. And you are literally treating this like a real drum kit. And I'm taking this a step further from one of the things that they can do, is every one of these mics has the option to load the other actual sounds, and these are the bleed mics. And the bleed mics, if you think about it, because if you use a real drum recording and you go to just a kick drum, you don't hear the drum by itself. You hear the other stuff because sound permeates things, and you try as hard as you can to isolate some things, but that's just not how that not in the cards. And you can set essentially the bleed, and that's what we've done here. And the way that they basically, so like when they went to go record the snare, for example, and they hit the snare, they had all the other mics set up. So that means that all the other mics are recording that exact hit at that exact moment. And so that one hit comes out in all the mics. And now whenever it plays that one hit, it's playing them throughout the rest of the mics. And you can, of course, tell it how much and how loud they're all going to be in there for each hit. I've just turned all of them on for this particular demonstration, just to show you how that works out. And so now when you're mixing the kick, you have to consider the bleed. You can, of course, not do that. You can just turn the bleed off, and you can hear just the kick for all that by itself, and then you can still treat it like a perfect recording. But if you want to have sort of the acoustic recording experience, there's a kick by itself. If you want to have, all right, I didn't even turn the kick on for the subs in the far away mic, but yeah. If you want to have the acoustic recording experience, you can, and it's basically like the real thing, only it's as if it's being played by an extremely good session player, because real people tend not to have that kind of consistency. But you can control for that too. There's different kinds of engines and different things you can have in here. Like I turned over here this option in the layering limits. I had layering limits off, which is to say that the articulations and the velocity layering is suddenly a lot denser than it would have been otherwise. So when I use, I'm still listening to the kick. When I use the, it's like when I made like these rolls over here. It doesn't sound the kind of fake that you get when you just play the same sample over and over again. Is try as you might with different velocity changes and like pitch changes or whatever. This kind of thing makes it feel real, and that's the whole point. Is that we're able to leverage reality in a world where we're not used to any, the electronic world. And of course, this also is handy for when we're doing sort of what Superior Drummer was designed for, which is the more sort of rock and metal oriented thing, where we can essentially replace drummers with Superior Drummer. You might be thinking, oh my god, it's awful, but I'm here to tell you, if you've listened to metal, any kind of like high order metal or rock or even indie stuff in the last like 10 years, you probably have been listening to Superior Drummer. Just gonna put that out there. And it is real. Like they are the actual recording. It is the actual playing, and like it's all put together in such a way that you can treat it like it's real. And you can take it to a whole other level with the whole bleed mic business. Like that whole thing is what sets apart Superior Drummer from everything else. And of course, it's gigantic. Like this particular patch I'm loading, it's 4.5 gigs just for this. And like I'm also not using the 16-bit, which dramatically cut that in half. Probably cut that in half. But the it's a very large library. I mean, most of them are pretty big. The independent one is not that big. Like the Metal Foundry one is pretty big in and of itself. But like that's really good because they spared not a single thing in sampling these hits, these instruments, and that kind of thing. And you can blend them and put them together and have ultimate control. And that's really the important part here, is that you have unprecedented control over something that you would normally have to have a reality for to do. You normally have to have a drum kit with drummers, and like believe me, I know I have a room over there that I built specifically to record drums. It's a whole other world when you're doing that kind of thing, and it's real drummers have their benefit. That's certainly true, especially because I'm not a drummer, and thinking of programming drums when you're not a drummer is a bit different than what you would do when you're actually playing things. And that's all well and good that you want to have to kind of research that sort of stuff. But insofar as the engineering goes, you usually are working with loops, or you're usually working with minor kinds of control. Like before Superior Drummer was a thing, there was Easy Drummer, and Easy Drummer was pretty well enough in control, for things that are important, but not to the degree that Superior Drummer is. And Superior Drummer for all the mic positions, and when you're putting out the outs for running Superior Drummer, like they're grouped into things. Like these 4 kick mics are all grouped out into one thing, and that's what I'm using to mix it. But you can get way more intensely on like inside this with these kick mics, like the input inside mic, outside mic, the sub mic, and the far away mic. Like you can mix this and turn this into a wholly different kind of kick now, not just because that's what that one kick is, but because you also have the mic positions to color everything, and you have every kind of control over it. This is the kind of control you have over this as you do now when you're doing digital guitar tones, which didn't used to be possible insofar as sounding as good as like actually making a cabinet. This is the kind of thing, and if you know anything about me, you know that I'm all about control over everything. And Superior Drummer so far is the only thing I've ever seen that gives me this kind of control. So that's pretty much what Superior Drummer is and why it's awesome. And over the next 4 weeks, there'll be one new video coming out every Friday that will go over sort of techniques of blending sort of the real with the fake, because when you're doing metal and rock and whatever, it's in your best interest to sound as real as possible, and that's pretty great for Superior Drummer. But then when you're doing electronic stuff, the priorities are a bit different, not unlike what's going on in this track. So look forward to that in the coming weeks. If you have any questions about this, please let me know. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff, and check out Superior Drummer and 2track.com. And as usual, have a nice day.